It is a dark day in the entertainment industry. Iconic multi-platinum recording artist Tupac Shakur was shot in Las Vegas. The rapper was shot inside of a BMW while stopped at a red light at the intersection of Cobalt and Flamingo Boulevards. For their part, Vegas police have not identified a suspect in the shooting.
Good afternoon. My name is Kevin McMahill. I'm the sheriff of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. For 27 years, the family of Tupac Shakur has been waiting for justice. We are here today to announce the arrest of 60-year-old Dwayne Keith Davis, aka Keefy D, for the murder of Tupac Shakur.
If there's no gun, no witnesses, no car, where's the case? I mean, I've been around a lot of mob guys in New York City, and they walk away from stuff a lot less powerful than that. But you've got to have at least those three things, and they had none of those.
And they were not allowed to record interviews. And so we were honoring that for Jeff, the FBI guy with us, because he said he can't sit in if they're being interviewed unless he goes and gets special approval, and we weren't going to wait around for that. His decision to surreptitiously record that interview is everything. Like, I can't even tell you, like, I could never have done the book or any of these things. We wouldn't be here where we are today, honestly, I don't think, if he hadn't secretly recorded that entire interview.
I think the recording that I've listened to, where Greg Kading just starts doing all the talking, that's not how a proffer session works on the federal side.
The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And the search warrant for the resident. You can come out with your hands up.
In reading this transcript, once Detective Long leaves the room, they're completely leading Keefy on what to say and to stick to the story and not let Keefy speak freely. And instead, they're putting words in his mouth to say, this is what you need to state during this interview. If you stick to this story, you'll sleep well. If you don't stick to this story, you're not going to sleep well, and we're going to potentially cause problems for you, which is complete police coercion, which is crazy. It's not acceptable, obviously. It's hard to be believed, but I'm reading it, so yeah.
We were in the cab and we heard, something happened and people been shot. I was like, oh no, I'm like, pull over, I'm like calling gas. I'm like, is everything okay? And she calls, says, no, go to the hospital. And I also remember seeing, Suge roll by in the gurney with a little Band-Aid on his head. And I was like, what happened? What happened? Is he like fighting? Why are you wearing a big sweater and he's wearing a t-shirt? I mean, it's like, why? You just ask these questions and you look at those pictures, that last photograph of him, the deer in the headlights photo, and he just looks sad, and it's just sad. And you think I think about the times that we were supposed to go to Vegas, like a few times. And I think to myself, God, it obviously, was set for it to happen there, somehow or another.
Tupac Shakur was more than a rap or a hip-hop musician. He was a poet, teacher, activist, movie star, and yes, a great lyricist. Even today, countless acts in hip-hop try to imitate his style. The Guinness Book of World Records recognizes him as the best-selling hip-hop artist, with over 75 million albums sold worldwide. Something else important concerning Tupac was the way he died. He was shot to death in Las Vegas, September 6, 1996. His death remains one of the most notorious unsolved murders of the last 20 years. In 10 years, a new team of investigators has been named for the investigation. But did the Vegas police get their man, and why is it this suspect after this many years? There's little to no physical evidence to mount a prosecution, so what do the Vegas police know that the public does not? Let's go back and find out.
Frank, why you showing us? Make a nigga like this feel bad.
James, what's up, man?
I feel you, homie. Hey, I hope you Chinese if you got the Chinese tattoos on you. Chinese? You don't know what the fuck they run on you, huh? That shit can say 2 egg rolls on you right now. That shit, you got, hey, get that. Ask somebody Chinese if you watching this tape, don't just say 2 egg rolls to go with hot sauce. That's that what this say? Niggas ain't Chinese, get Chinese letters like they been somewhere and shit. You ain't never let the block, nigga. Act like you was the China guy.
Fuck be clowning everybody, man.
Oh, how I want to be free, but freedom is miles away.
One of his publicists, Karen Lee, when he was locked up, had even talked to him about going to Yale Drama School because his potential for acting was so strong.
I met Pac through Shock G, and we just hit it off. He recognized me immediately, right off the bat, told me I'm an actor too. I said, yeah, you are, actually. And everybody started laughing, and that's how we hit it off.
He was very charismatic. The camera loved him completely.
He was almost like a James Dean type person. He had some danger about him. You could sense it. And I remember Burt Reynolds told me once, he called me a movie star. And I said, thank you. He said, don't say thank you. Asked me why I said that. So I asked him. And he said, you have the ability to be dangerous. He said, movie stars are dangerous. He said, and he named some actors who were really hot on TV at the time, and he said, they're not movie stars, they're television actors. He said, but you're a movie star because you have the ability to be dangerous.
The ideas that he had would have definitely been done. He would have acted in them, they would have been funny. Completely funny, happy, you know.
Tupac really, really loved acting.
He kind of reminds me of Don King. It's like when I met Don King, there's one public persona, and then behind closed doors, Don King is just baritone, very much like this. But then when the doors open and people are around, it's like, hey, my brother, my black brother. So he go into that thing. But Tupac had a thing he would do. He just wore his armor differently outdoors, but he could relax when he was like behind closed doors with his boys. And he was a lot of fun, man.
Rapping was just natural for him. Writing was natural for him. Expressing himself through that was natural for him. But that wasn't the end of it for him.
What you find in this business is that so many of the people who are rappers and gangster rappers, they're not. I mean, you know, people like Tupac, they went to private schools. You know, Biggie Smalls, they were not uneducated street guys. They were like smart young black guys who kind of thought the street life was something to be celebrated.
Death Row, he was smart enough to see that Interscope wasn't gonna get him out. They was playing that he needed to cool us game. He needed to get himself together game. He needed a detox from weed game. They was playing that silly game. You can stay there for 2 years when they come out here and be calm.
He had signed with Death Row, and shortly after signing with Death Row, he became very unhappy with the agreement that he made. But that's something that invariably happens with artists. Artists get mesmerized when they see dollar signs and checks and people saying that they're going to do things for you that hadn't been done before. And since Suge Knight was making all these moves and Tupac didn't want to be in prison anymore, he wanted to be out recording music and doing shows and all that, he went ahead and made a deal with the devil. shouldn't have done it.
I come from a prison town, so I understand the position that Tupac was in, because a lot of my family members were in the same position. You'll do anything to get out of prison.
But you know what? I just can't wait. I can't wait to make you draw.
Oh yeah, more than anything to say, I want them to see our
That wasn't his plan. It wasn't going to be, he wasn't going to be wedded to no death row. Death row was confined. When you think about him and his spirit and how he was, even if you didn't know it then, it was confined, and not because for no particular reason. Not because Suge was anything or not. You know what I mean? But he had to run his, he had to be in charge. He had that thing where he wanted to control. He was a capitalist.
I want to roll in this motherfucker like I rolled in the rap game, and like a mushroom touch everything.
Right.
It was just going. There was one time we went to Catalina. We took a little boat over to Catalina, and we were talking about ideas over there. It was me, him, one of the directors, James, and Patty, and Mo Preem was there, and we were just going over ideas. You know, someone goes and records in Reading or someplace far, you just go so that you aren't bothered by your cares, and you just start thinking about stuff that you want to do.
Do that right now. We can touch everything to be so.
I'm talking like, I'm talking.
The Gucci, the soundtrack, the owl, everything is
yeah.
done. We can do it with the G, we can do it good, we can be efficient, we can do it.
An actor, when we go on the road, we always take a suit because you may meet mayors, dignitaries, and so on and so forth. So you always have a suit in your bag. There's a certain thing that you carry with you when you're an actor. You don't get too tattooed up, because even though makeup can cover it, if they can't, people receive you differently. People that want you to market their products and so on and so forth, let them decorate you. You know what I'm saying? So I used to talk to him all the time about the actor's journey and keeping all your opportunities as wide open as possible. You know, you can rock the earrings, you can do all that stuff, but if you're doing a Western or something way back period, then you got the earring hole, that's gonna work somebody hard trying to keep that thing sealed so people can't tell what it is. So I used to talk to him about actor's journey, how you keep yourself a clean canvas, all the fire and brimstone and all the powers on the inside, but you keep the outside clean. And so we used to talk about that all the time. Actor's journey, Pac.
He was bigger than death row. His ideas was bigger than that, because he wanted to go further than that, and he wasn't dragging a Suge behind.
He definitely understood that gangsters are like presidents, like Barack Obama's a gangster, because he just has stuff done. He didn't get his hands dirty, right? And the thugs are out there in the street doing the crime, you know? And so first he was all about that gangster life. And then I remember when he showed me his tattoo, Thug Life, I was like, oh, man, what you doing, man? He's like, nah, sometimes, like, you know, you just gotta get a little dirt on you, man. Yeah, you just gotta get a little dirt on you. So I was like, all right, boy. Don't worry about it, it's all good. I'm praying for you, man.
Yeah, because he had this label called Out the Gutter. And he was gonna piggyback Funk House with it. And, you know, in fact, when he went to Death Row, after the fact, me, my dad, you know, Funk House, Tupac's manager at the time, H.M. Gregory, and Shock G, we had a deal on the table with Interscope. We were gonna put all our resources together and put it out.
I know Pac was really excited about being able to step out on his, he was making everything Machiavelli at that point. You know, it wasn't just this album, it was everything, you know.
No No, this is my story. I love this shit. I'm not thinking enough that I don't want to be involved in. I don't want to sell my ideas. I don't want to play my thoughts. I want to watch them grow.
Because see, there was already a squabble as to whether his obligation had been met with the 3-album deal. And he felt like he had met it. And from what I understood was Suge felt like, man, I only got 2 albums out of you now. And he said, no, man, I did All Eyes on Me. That's a double CD. And then here's Machiavelli. So, and I know the original thing was the 3 because I actually had, in my contracts, I had copy and paperwork of the contract they did. You know, the one they wrote out with their hand. You know, that was in my contracts. So he considered it complete.
One of the reasons he put out Machiavelli because he was about to start his own label, Machiavelli.
Yeah, I remember Pac was going to start his own record label, Mavelli Records, and I don't know if it was going to be distributed through Death Row Records or he was going to do it on his own, but it was a label that he was working on, and we was going to Outlaws, we was going to sign with that label, Mavelli Records.
Which is the 3rd record, and I no longer owe you anything. I'm no longer under your restraint or constraints, you know what I'm saying? This is, okay, I borrowed 3 from you. Here is 2. I owe you 1 more, and this is it. I'm out.
Many people I spoke to about Tupac said he was out. 3 albums. Now, whether or not you agree that the double CD All Eyes on Me constitutes 2 of those 3 albums, it's immaterial. It all harkens back to that handwritten contract Tupac did while he was in jail. And over 15 years of research into Tupac and Death Row Records, I've never seen an official contract, only the handwritten one.
You know, the contract that was done with Tupac was effective from a Death Row perspective in terms of getting 3 albums from Tupac. It probably, if you were to talk to maybe business affairs people at Universal, they probably wish it had been written differently so they would have gotten more records and more ownership and stuff. But I think the agreement served its purpose.
Yeah, it was before because when he came back, that's when he got shot. So it was before he went to New York.
He knew gangsters, what they would perceive as gangsters, tougher guys than a Suge. He just didn't know gangsters, those gang people.
A lot of people don't realize it's a 92% failure rate in this business. Only 8%, that's less than 1 in 10 that will make it. And so the majority of the artists are a tax write-off. But when you look at how the financing works, in business, they're just bodies that are processing and moving money through. Is it really art and entertainment, or is it just capitalism?
If they want you with the label, they want you for whatever reason, because of your fame. And if you don't want to be there, that's going to be an issue.
My biggest takeaway from Death Row Records was chaos. You have rumors of artist beatdowns, different jealousies, gang politics. And the common consensus was it was all over not being paid properly, over money.
Chaos. A lot of chaos there, a lot of confusion. There were good days at Death Row, and there were bad days at Death Row. It just depends on when you worked.
Oh, he definitely, yeah, he's done. He was done. He was done. He was done. There were meetings with attorneys, Yaz and I, yeah, he was done. He was done. He had fulfilled his obligation with Death Row and no intentions of renewing any sort of paper agreement.
Yeah, there's been a lot of stuff since Tupac's death that indicated that he did not intend to stay. Some of the people who were involved with him recording, because all these albums and stuff that were recorded, you know, he was well aware he had a 3-album obligation to Death Row. He did not intend to deliver more product to Death Row. And he had made that, I think, clear to Afeni and other people who work with him. So he was recording with the idea that he was going to release that on his own or through another label.
I went to George Price's office, and Tupac, he had a conference call with Tupac. He had him on speaker so I could hear what was being said. And he was letting Tupac know what his schedule was going to be for some interviews and things like that. And Tupac was very vocal, said he wasn't going to do these interviews, he wasn't going to cooperate, and he didn't want to be with Death Row. Now, I was here to hear this all. And I said, oh my God, I don't know if this man's going to be around too much longer, because if he's going to be this confrontational, and if this is really how he feels after money has been invested in him, there's going to be a real problem.
But now when he leaves, the question is how he's going to leave. He's either going to leave quietly, it's all going to be good, Sugar's going to be cool with it. If Sugar's not cool with it, it's going to be a problem, because he's going. He's going to leave. It doesn't matter whether it's quietly or a problem. And I know Tupac is going to make it a problem if that person try to hold him once he fulfills his obligation.
So when Tupac was talking to George Price and I was sitting there with the speakerphone on, I knew his days were probably numbered. I was really uncomfortable with that whole conversation.
So the interesting thing about Death Row Records is you had artists, you had people being recruited from the streets. They'd go in, lay a verse, and expected to be paid that day. They had no sense of publishing, no sense of royalties. They were basically acting as a work for hire.
Most record labels back then, very welcoming, no security or anything. You just have a nice young receptionist at the front desk, and they'd usher you through, and you'd see all the gold records hanging up on the walls, and everybody would wave to you, and the person that had you there would say, oh, this is Cynthia Horner, and Right On Magazine, whatever. And then everyone's waving. This was like being in a fortress. Like I said, there were different doors that you had to get through, and it was like a lot of bureaucracy. It was almost like, I've never been to a prison before, but it's kind of seemed like that to me. But it was really scary. I didn't enjoy being there at all.
The rap business or industry is more toxic than the streets and politics together.
You also had people claim that they weren't being paid properly. You have Dash, you have Corrupt. You even had Dr. Dre and Snoop leaving the label.
No, Dre didn't like that at all, and so he actually ended up separating himself from Death. He wouldn't go to the office, he wouldn't go to the studio, he wouldn't make records. He didn't want to be around that element.
When Dre left, all the money got cut off. When Dre left, yeah, that's everything, just no money. So I always wonder where all that money is. I just found out from media, he said he never got paid a penny for that Machiavelli album. Either did I. Nobody got paid. That thing sold 50 million albums or something like that.
Man, that's 3 albums. No, that's 3. And Suge looked at it, no, that's 3 projects. That ain't, that's just 2 projects, man. That ain't 3 albums.
So Tupac was pretty unhappy at Death Row.
At a certain point, yes.
Towards the end of his life?
I'll say, yeah, towards the end of the Machiavelli thing, and I'm going to tell you why I think he was unhappy. Because during the making of Machiavelli, he called the office, Death Row. And these were some of the words, not word for word, that came out of his mouth. He said Snoop was corny. He was taking too much time doing a record. He'd take all day doing one song. He says, I'm paying Nate Dogg child support, okay? And at that point, that's when I knew, oh, wow, this guy is not happy.
So recoupment is a non-issue with respect to whether or not he could go and put out his records himself. And given the success he had had with selling records, I think there'd be people lined up to make a record deal with him for him to put out records on his own. So, yeah, so I would not agree that he would not be able to put out his own product.
We were getting very close to wrapping on Gridlock. We probably had maybe a week or two left on it. And myself and Kevin Hackey, we were both on duty that day on the set. And it was in the evening time because it was already night. And I got this phone call from Yasmin Fula. And she said, hey, Frank, I'm coming down to Gridlock. Don't you and Kevin leave because I need to talk to the two of you.
Tupac wouldn't move for nobody he didn't want to move for. Believe me. Either Tupac was with you or he was not. Either he liked it you or he didn't. Frank, he was a diamond in the rough. I mean, Tupac loved Frank and Frank loved Tupac.
So, you know, probably 30 minutes later, she shows up and she goes, hey, there's some things going on over at the death row office. Pac has called an audit on the death row office.
Who did you always fear? Who did the streets always protect, and who do you always fear? The streets always protect the accountant, and you don't want the accountant to tell anything. So the mentality of an audit means you think you're gonna get the truth.
You know, I talked to Frank. Frank was very knowledgeable, very, you know, he understood the whole record business. Like, you know, I need to get Tupac to the studio so Tupac can make the record get turned in, Tupac make money, and I can ask for more money.
Now, this is the first time I had ever heard anything about an audit, obviously, because she came down to tell us this story about, you know, the audit going on. And her main thing was that she wanted us to pay, like, a little bit more closer attention to Pac, watch him a little bit closer.
I think Frank Niece came in there and Pac sat with her for an hour and a half, talking, ordered food.
She wasn't sure of the repercussions of this audit that was going to be going on because apparently Pac was pretty hot over it.
He should have been auditing his statements and then challenging anything on the statements that were not his.
Okay. And she basically said, you know, you guys need to step up your game, watch him. We're shaking some things up right now.
Frank was everything. I mean, you needed Tupac, everybody knew, go to Frank if you want to get Tupac to do something.
And because we had already heard on the phone, driving around in LA, a call, Tupac is at death row, pissed off. He wants his shit. That was in June.
I got a call from Al Gittins. I was at home, I lived in Orange County. And Al Gittins says to me, hey, you need to get to the studio because Pac is trying to, you know, take masters out of the studio.
He who owns the masters do whatever he want, when he want. I can put out a record, I don't need nobody's opinion, nobody's right, because I own the what? Masters. He who owns the masters choose, picks, when, what, how. So the masters is a big play.
And Suge has told us that no one is to take masters from the studio anymore.
And they are important to a record company too.
So apparently there had been a problem, and this was again the first time I heard about no one can take masters or anything that they've recorded out of the studio.
And you've probably seen the writing where it says, this is deemed to be a work for hire within meaning of the copyright law. The reason you have that in there is unless you have that kind of statement, anything that people create, they own, even if somebody else pays for it. Unless there's an agreement in writing to the contrary.
If you own your masters, you own everything.
But Al Gittins was the manager for Right Way Security. And he called me specifically knowing that I was Pac's bodyguard, saying, hey, you need to get down here, you need to talk to him, you need to calm him down. He's cussing, he's going off, he's going crazy.
If there's anybody that could have made Pac stop, it was Frank.
If he was there, it was confrontational if he was going to get whatever he was going to get. If he was asking for his masters or asking for the paper that he signed.
And I said, look here, man, what do you want me to do? You want me to get in my car and drive to Tarzana from, Orange County and get there in time to stop Tupac from taking his masters? I don't think so.
Hey, yo, Frankie. Frankie! Yo, Frankie!
What he records this fool?
Oh, well, back then, because we only kept one set back then. Because remember, back then we were actually dealing with reels or DAT tapes.
He did those 3 albums. It didn't take him long.
Oh, when will an artist see money again? From their record sales? Never. 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 They're always going to stay in the hole.
The chances of Tupac recouping his money and leaving Death Row Records was very slim. They kept him in a cycle of debt. It reminds me of the miners' towns, where people would go to the general store and spend their debits to buy goods at an elevated price.
That's to keep them signed to you.
If the record company's controlling the numbers, then the record company's controlling the artist.
Because his contract was just for 3 records. So when he delivered the 3 records, whether he was recouped or not, he's free to go.
I just recently had an artist within the last 30 days say to me, I was out of my deal in 2013. I said, no, you weren't. They said, yes, I was. I said, no, you weren't. You weren't recouped till 2019, and I just got you your release letter.
They didn't spend that much money. I've seen people spend a lot. Remember, MC Hammer sold millions of records and went bankrupt. The world is full of people who made millions and millions of dollars and went bankrupt. You can spend it.
So that's the completion of that obligation as I know it. And I tell you, he had movie scripts and he was truly interested in that. People were talking to him about it.
Yeah, I knew what an audit was, but it wasn't per se what type of audit that was going to be performed on a record label.
Things that I heard from the horse's mouth for how they do things. And he was like, I'm Tupac. The IRS took my car. I went the same day and bought another car cash. And I was like, okay, I understand, but this is the way they do business. It's not going to benefit you.
Because every Friday, the runner from Death Row office would bring $5,000 in cash and give it to me to give to Tupac later on that day. And Pac would, every Friday, would tell me, Frank, call the office and have Rory bring me, 5.
And then, we find out 20 years later that that's exactly what happened. They were holding on to his money. They were putting things that he was supposed to own. They were putting it in other people's names and keeping it away from him.
Yeah, he was making millions of dollars, but $5,000 out of $1 million is not much. That's not even a fraction of a percent.
He was bigger than life, but the process of the money rolling in had not. It was being leveraged. It was being leveraged by the sales and funded by UMG. Because that's 9 times out of 10, that's how it happens. When you see the lifestyle, somebody's got to pay for it.
You haven't seen the way people spend money. Just go buy yourself a plane. You'll be broke in a year.
It just was going to be ugly.
I remember when Reggie Wright Jr. said Tupac was, his words, never gonna leave Death Row. I always took it to mean Tupac was happy to stay there, but now it has a totally different meaning.
In music news, multi-platinum recording artist rapper Tupac Shakur has single-handedly ignited a bi-coastal war with the release of his controversial track, Hit 'Em Up. In this profanity-laced diss track, Shakur takes on not only his former friend and fellow rapper Christopher Biggie Smalls Wallace, but the entire East Coast rap scene in what many are already calling the greatest diss track of all time. For his part, Shakur claims to have been the victim of this East Coast rivalry when he was shot in New York in November of 1994.
I was worried when I started hearing about the song because of the fact that I realized that once you put these words out there, you can't take them back. And you can't even explain yourself, because if somebody perceives your lyrics a certain way, even if you say, I didn't mean it, it's just a song, that's not the way the other person is going to feel about it. Because at one point, Tupac and Biggie actually got along. They got along pretty well.
Hit him up. I was happy for him because I knew that it was going to serve him, but I also thought it was dangerous for him too.
But as the rivalry brewed, the rivalry just started spilling out in different factions.
He was injured, you know? He was injured, and that was very painful to watch him vulnerable like that. And because he trusted the people.
In fact, Biggie's wife, Faith Evans, was accused of being involved with Tupac.
This raps have been here from the beginning, but this was like no other. Even if you take Ice Cube's No Vaseline, you know, his diss to NWA, I mean, which was, you know, definitely one of the best, hardest diss records ever, but just the personal attacks. I mean, he's saying, I slept with your wife.
And some of that actually started because she had come out to California and she had taken a picture with him.
I mean, so rappers say a lot of things in songs, and it's just to cut at you. You don't know if it's necessarily true or not.
Now, everybody's got camera phones. People are always taking photos with somebody, whether they know them or not, and it doesn't really mean anything. It was just a photo.
So that prompted us doing like a whole issue, an East Coast, West Coast rivalry issue. And one thing that was very important for me to have in that issue was a survey. So we prepared a survey. It was like 3 questions that we presented to artists, and we asked them to respond. Like, do you feel like there is really an East Coast, West Coast rivalry? And what do you feel are the contributing factors? It was like three questions.
But back then, you didn't have social media. So if you had a photo, there was no way to really explain it. The photo existed and that was it.
And many of them, you know, almost unanimously, they're like, that's just the media hoopla. They're like, I'm from the East Coast, I love West Coast artists.
He didn't think a black person would shoot him, would hurt him, forget shoot, would hurt him. He didn't believe that.
I walked away from hip hop because I thought a lot of the kids were just out of control and hadn't been taught a certain moral code. Like I used to talk to Pac about. He had too much of a moral code to hang out with some of the dudes he started hanging out with.
Oh no, man, Suge was a buster. You know, he's not anybody to be afraid of. But his desire to be in that kind of street life, you know, he put out in the streets, anybody gets out of prison, come to death row, I'll give you a job. So he began to surround himself with some people who really were serious criminals.
And I would always tell him about that. Ice-T would tell him too. It's like, yeah, what they have, you have a moral code these other dudes don't have. And you can't expect, you call them punks and sellouts and all that stuff, that's who they are, man. That's what we're trying to tell you. That's why you need to just switch up and take the actor's journey. You know what I mean? Get that music, get that stack, but actor's journey is where it's at.
Oh, that was the one I didn't like. I didn't like it because I'm like, it's just not nice. And regardless of the truth of it or not, it's like, treat people the way you want to be treated, not the way they're treating you. And, you know, we definitely had words about that.
He was around in New York. He wasn't around all the time. Earlier he was around because him and Pop wrote words and stuff together, I imagine.
Hit him up, I don't know, I remember doing that video. I mean, I liked the beat. It was great to dance to, but I did not like, you know, I'm more of a peaceful human being. I prefer, even if someone does something bad to me, I don't really want to talk bad about it.
Biggie came to the hospital. Biggie stayed at the hospital that night. Biggie retrieved one of the weapons to give to the cousin, whatever, that was left there.
I remember when he got in the incident where he was shot multiple times in New York, and I heard about it, how cold chills went through me. Right around the same time that the incident happened, something weird, I just felt weird. And when I was finally able to talk to Pac, thank God he survived, he came out to LA and we hid him out at another actor's house. I remember one time telling him the only time he probably got pissed at me, where I could visually see he was pissed, right? But he was really too little to do anything. You know what I'm saying? I was like, dude, I said to him, I said, I forgot how I phrased it, but it had to do with other people treating him like he's their pit bull.
Biggie was there that night as shocked as anybody else in terms of what you're looking at. He was at the hospital. When they brought Tupac in, when we got to the hospital, Biggie was at the hospital.
And he got pissed, man. But I was like, look, man, you can't have these dudes got you on records and sicken you on other people and they stacking checks. You know what I mean? Come on, man. Pop. Stop being this dude's pit bull. And but I remember he got really irritated with me about that. You know what I mean? Because he stopped talking a little bit. He just was kind of like, and he, you know, let me know he didn't appreciate it, but he also knew my heart and that my heart was set after him.
I only know what I know from, what I know is that night when he got shot, Biggie was at the hospital. And he was not at the hospital gloating.
I think one of the strangest things I've ever seen was in New York when Tupac had left New York, came to California, and we went back. We got into a confrontation at the park with a couple other artists. There was some pushing, there was some shoving, there was some name calling, and I don't think we really left on good terms. I knew going back to New York would be trouble for us if we ventured back there in the future.
But I was around him a lot, and when a lot of the hood dudes would come around and they would start getting crazy, I would get out of there, man, because I've spent enough money on lawyers.
I was there when an argument took place between Tupac and Mr. Knight. I was in the limo, me and Tupac, Outlaw Immortals. We were driving around in Harlem, and the radio came on with Snoop Dogg saying that he had no beef with New York.
Biggie Smalls, he's an artist that I listen to his music. I love what he do, you know what I'm saying? And it's just me, I'm just a smooth, peaceful individual. I don't have beef with nobody right now, baby.
Which sent Pac into a rage, because Pac, of course, had big beef with New York. That set Tupac off, and we immediately spun the limo around, and we went back to the hotel to confront Snoop. We couldn't find him, but we found Mr. Knight, and Pac's words were, I'm gonna cut out Mavelli, and when I cut out Mavelli, I'm the hell up out of here. You got your money, I don't want nothing else to do with Death Row, I'm out. And this is the first time I've ever heard of Mavelli before it even came out to be a CD record, that he's gonna give Suge all the rights to Mavelli, he just wants his freedom, and he wants off Death Row.
And Suge didn't want to hear that.
And Mr. Knight was very upset, and they got to yelling at each other back and forth. They confronted each other basically to a face-to-face. I did slide in between them and said, hey, you know, you can't do this while I'm here, or I am gonna have to step out of the room.
What happened was he signed his deal, and then he started realizing that Death Row wasn't what he thought Death Row was. He ran into some trouble because he did have that cocky attitude, and that was Suge Knight's company. So Suge Knight was not going to let Tupac control the narrative at his company.
Normally, I am asked in every situation that I can remember while working with Death Row, when there was altercations, fights, where some type of discipline was going to be passed out during Death Row, I'm usually asked to step outside the room. But on this occasion, I think Mr. Knight had me stay for the safety of Tupac. I mean, that's the reason I was there, because I think Mr. Knight, with me not being there, he would have put his hands on him. He was that upset.
Especially with somebody like a Suge Knight, who was extremely dictatorial. You know, he wasn't the kind of person that you could just go up to and say, look, I'm sorry, I don't want to be with your label anymore. It didn't work that way.
Tupac said, hey, fuck it, I'm out of here. This was in New York after the MTV Music Awards. Prior to us going home, there was an altercation about what Snoop had done over the radio while we were in the limo.
What did you tell me he told you? I know you and I had a conversation. You told me that Pac felt like he was
why? What it was is that I think at the time after we did the
MTV
Awards, I think after we did the MTV Awards, I don't know what went down, but he wasn't too happy about it, and he didn't care about going anywhere. So he didn't feel like he didn't want to go to Vegas. I don't even think he wanted to do the video.
The last thing he said to me prior to leaving was, he's not going to be in Vegas. I don't have to worry about him showing up, and don't worry about it because he won't be there. That's what he told me right before we put him on the plane.
Suge didn't let none of my security ride with me. I had to ride on the plane with him, his homies, and Pac. And it was the most uncomfortable ride I ever had in my life because my nigga didn't say nothing to me the whole ride. And that's a 5-hour flight.
Because he had told us that he was not going there with, his words, them sellout niggas.
Because I feel like they finna try to do something to me.
Mm-hmm.
So when I get off the plane, we land, he walked down the steps, I walk down the steps. We meet right here. I'm like, cuz, you going to Vegas? He do me like this.
On September the 6th, Tupac was back from New York. They were shooting the video, Toss It Up.
My name is Chris Herzog. I'm the owner and sole proprietor of the Bodyguard Group of Beverly Hills. And I would like to say for the record that the only reason that we've never had a client injured, robbed, never been sued by a client, never had a client have a burglary, home invasion, nothing. I repeatedly begged Tupac. I said, please, Tupac, this is a B7 armored vehicle. It can stop armor-piercing AK-47 rounds on full auto, point blank. It's the highest level you can get. Listen to me. Ignore the people telling you not to do this, like Suge Knight and all the other people that he had said to me, keep telling him, you don't need that, you don't need that, it's too expensive.
Reggie made a mistake prior to that happening. I brought it to his attention that he needed to have additional bodyguards while we were in New York, simply because of what had happened prior.
He let the stupidest people he knew make his decision. What, are you gonna put one in every city you're going to? Yeah, because at one point he had the money. So I said to him, they're wrong, and what they're doing is gonna get you killed. And he said, I ain't growing old anyway. And I said, don't you wanna be alive for your mother and for the people you love?
I would always try to correct him when he would say that he probably was gonna die young. And I'd go, man, why you put that negative stuff out there like that? Stop doing that, man. He was like, nah, I'm just, no, you're right. I'll keep it high. I'll keep the science high.
And his girlfriend was standing next to him, was arguing with him, listen to Chris, listen to him.
He was very sensitive. When I say very sensitive, that's what made him a brilliant actor. That's what made him a brilliant artist, because he saw everything.
Tupac drops Hit 'Em Up, and already his list of enemies is compounding. You already have Congress, police officers, and now Tupac decides to take on the whole East Coast.
On September the 6th, when I arrived in Las Vegas, I found out that September 7th, or the next day, that we were going to have a security meeting around noon at this attorney's office. This attorney that we met at his office in Las Vegas, never before had we had a meeting at an attorney's office or with an attorney even present in any of our security, meetings. Never.
Why did he go to that meeting? Who was that guy? And he upstairs. Now I looked on the door, and you know how the doors that has listed people that work at that door.
His name wasn't on it.
His name ain't on there. His name ain't on there. I always do that.
That's where I looked too. Especially after he had to be a car.
That's right. I made it a point, Frank.
Because he didn't even know where his cars were.
No.
And that's what was his office.
That was his office. He was lost.
Yeah.
He didn't even know where the pens were at.
I don't know who the attorney was. He was no one that none of us had ever seen before. This happened on September 7th of 1996, first time out of character.
We were told specifically, do not carry your weapon. That's what we were told.
And that's the first time we've been in Vegas where somebody said, that's right. That's right. And then they were really persistent about you not having one. You see what I'm saying? They're going to be checking you. And then they was even trying to convince the people in CCW not to carry.
You have to ask yourself, why would people make this up in a conversation between themselves? I'm pretty sure that Michael didn't even know he was being recorded, and Frank was doing this for his own safety. The whole thing is very telling.
Now, we've been to Vegas about 5 times, Frank. Look, have you ever heard him say, don't carry your weapon?
Absolutely not. I've written 3 books. I've done a documentary. I've appeared in a few other documentaries. In 2007, right after our first assassination movie came out, Reggie contacted allhiphop.com and told them that he never told the bodyguards not to carry weapons. He said something stupid like it was only for people working at the club. He also said specifically, I'd never say that to a bodyguard. Now, we would have debriefings and things like that just to let us know, hey, this is what things are gonna be like, ABC, XYZ. Nothing like on September 7th, around noon or so.
Well, this is supposed to be his office we're in. Now, here's another thing. Did you notice the pictures?
Yes.
They weren't him, Frank.
Yeah.
They weren't him. And you know what I'm thinking? I don't think that guy was a lawyer. That office wasn't his.
I've been to Club 662 on many of occasions, and never have they told me to leave my weapons, either in my room or my car. So I questioned them. Why would I leave my weapons in a vehicle or in the hotel room, and I'm personally guarding Pac in one of the most hottest places to be?
I'm telling you. Something is not right.
There are many mistakes that Tupac made that did not have to be made. And many artists are not learning from his mistakes because over the years, more and more rappers have died. And it's because there was a flaw. There was always some major flaw that kind of led to their demise. Back in the day, back when Tupac died, no one really even knew where to turn. Because, of course, Suge Knight was an obvious suspect, but there were other names that didn't turn up for years. And they're not invincible because there's always somebody that can help you get to that person. We're better than you. We can out-top you. We can kill you.
The East Coast, West Coast thing became a thing because they put it on record and publicly embarrassed other guys. And so they want to feel like they're protected and they're able to provide protection and step up according to their code and handle certain things. And the East Coast, West Coast thing, I hated it. I mean, I just hated it, man, because to me, it's exactly what a colonizer would want to see us doing. Is killing each other, And so we would talk about that all the time, and that's good in a room, like we're in a room talking, but when you go outside, the other guy didn't hear that conversation, and he's carrying. He's strapped, he's looking for you, because he wants the reputation of putting one in.
King3rd.com, nigga. It's my time now, baby. I'm about to take it to a whole nother level. Hey, I'm feeling good, feeling great. Hey. Now I'm ready to leave, to take off. Time to take off, time to take off. Time, I'm ready to go, to take off. Time to take off, time to take off. I'm ready to go.
Now it's Saturday, the 7th of September in the morning. Pac is on his way from LA, and Kevin Hackey had my Nextel two-way cell phone radio that should have been given to me when I arrived in Vegas.
So the Secret Service, who understands probably better than anyone how critical communications is, talks about it as basically they would stop a movement and put the person back in a protected bubble or a lockdown bunker type area if they even started having poor communications.
Well, Reggie was upset about that. He was saying, effing Kevin Hackey, blah, blah, blah.
I was Los Angeles County jail booking in a burglary suspect. I went to work that day. I had arrested someone early on that day, a burglary suspect. During the apprehension of the arrest, the suspect was injured. So I had to transport him to Los Angeles County General Hospital. And anytime you book in a suspect that's injured, there has to be medical clearance. And that's where I was down there.
Now, I have not heard yet about the gun problem. I just learned I wasn't going to have a radio, and it seemed like Reggie wasn't going to do anything about it. I was just stuck with no radio.
Each guy has 2 radios, 4 batteries, and 2 different mic setups, so he can just swap out himself.
The night of September 7th is another example of chaos at the label. It's fight night, Vegas. Tupac makes the entrance song for Mike Tyson the day before in California. You have engineers rushing from California the day of to Vegas to get the DAT tape there. So much to the extent that Damon Thomas wrecks a luxury car on the way to Vegas.
Right after we had that security meeting, we met at a TGI Fridays for lunch. And I'm asking myself how this is gonna work. I mean, I don't have a radio. Now, I don't have a gun either. And Michael Moore made the, biggest, hoorah about the weapons.
I was told to go to 662 that afternoon and that I should not be bodyguarding Tupac at all, that Frank Alexander was going to pick him up and that I was not to be with him at all.
Why would you just have Frank with him when you got all these other cops?
I was a little upset that I was taken off of him, and I got into a little argument with Reggie Wright at lunch over it. He said, Mike, I'm putting Frank back on him, and I'm taking you back off. And I said, Reggie, that part doesn't make sense. Why not leave me and Frank on Tupac?
This is their #1 artist. I mean, he's as high profile as they get. And you're paying for all the security. I mean, you got all these guys at the club.
And he said, Michael Moore, do what you're told. I'm gonna put you at Club 662, and you're gonna handle the security along with Al Giddens at the club. And then I said, Reggie, that doesn't make sense.
In the military, they call it an illegal order. It's the only order you never have to follow is an illegal order. You have an obligation, a duty, honor, duty, country, self, to not follow an illegal order. What they gave those guys was an illegal order, directly placing his life in danger. If they would have gone to him as a group and threatened to quit, he probably would have kept him, and he'd probably still be alive right now.
Earlier that evening, after the meeting at the attorney's office, Reggie said, hey, Pac is back at the Lexor. I'm going to go drop you off, go meet up with him. So he dropped me off. I saw Pac and all of the outlaws and went over, hugged him, greeted him and everything. And, Pac said, hey, Big Frank, how was your vacation, man? I was like, it's cool, man, So he had been gambling. He was actually shooting craps at the Lexor. And Pac is Pac. He said, hey, let's go. And we go, where are we going? He goes, we're going to go over to the MGM. And I'm like, well, are we going to get a cab or how are we going to get over there? He goes, no, we're going to walk over there.
At that time, I was really instructed not to be on Tupac. The time that you see me between the MGM Grand and you see me at the Lexor, I'm actually doing that on my own. I am really not supposed to be there because that lunch, prior to that, while at lunch, I was instructed to be strictly at 662. So what I did is I seen Tupac roaming around with Frank, and I just, on my own, went in and decided to help out as best I could prior to that.
So Michael Moore, myself, and all of the outlaws with Tupac walked from the Lexor to the MGM. We get to the MGM, again, he goes to a crap table, and the MGM was a little bit, more crowded that evening while he was gambling. He was gambling, he was, winning, he was doing good. And Pac said to me, go over, call Reggie, and find out what time Suge wants to meet to go into the fight. Tupac asked me to go make the call. I didn't have a radio, I couldn't contact Reggie, so I had to go to a landline phone to call over to where Reggie was at.
Reggie did something that he's never done. He's never stayed at 662. That day, he stayed at the club. Then why would he need me there? And why would I be taking off from Tupac?
If your go-to excuse as the head of security for a record label is that we forgot our radios and no one told me, what kind of supervisor are you?
You put Tupac at risk when you remove one bodyguard and say, hey, Frank, you handle it.
When he was in a casino gambling around his table, it's like if you're in Las Vegas and someone's gambling and they're like a hot roller on the crap table, and all you hear is the screaming, you see the table's really full, and then you see all these people around because they're trying to see who's winning this money. This is in any situation in Las Vegas. Well, this particular, evening, Tupac is at the crap table, he's winning, and the crowd just started like from the front of the table, and it got like this, and it got like this, and it got like this, until the crowd was just big. It was enormous. Tupac asked me to find out what time we were going to go to the fight. Well, I didn't have a radio to call Reggie Wright, nor did Michael Moore have a radio to call Reggie Wright. So Pac asked me to go over to the payphone to call Reggie. I went over to call Reggie to find out what time we were going to go to the fight that night, the Mike Tyson, Bruce Seldon fight. And by the time I got from hanging up the phone with Reggie, finding out the information, I go back to the same table that Pac was at, and he was gone. He wasn't there. He was gone. Him, the Outlaws, and Michael Moore, they were gone. And I'm walking all over the MGM looking for him, and I couldn't find him, so I couldn't call anywhere. So I walked back over to the Lexor by myself. I get back over there, I'm down on the floor looking for Tupac, the Outlaws, and Michael Moore.
Got impatient, and he wanted to leave. So we left the MGM Grand and went back to the Lexor. Then I took Tupac all the way upstairs to his room and dropped him off. And then I went to my room, and that is how I left Tupac.
I got back over to the Lexor. I saw Pac walking around by himself.
Okay, first I do want to clear up, I didn't leave Tupac alone. During our conversation on the way back from the MGM Grand, I explained to Tupac that Mr. Wright was taking me off of earlier that day. And I walked him all the way to his room. I explained he's a real impatient person. I walked him to his room, and my understanding was he was supposed to wait there till other security got to him. So I went to my room, and that was actually the last. I didn't have no knowledge he was downstairs in the lobby until I got a phone call from you saying, hey, why is Tupac down here? It was news to me.
Who is you?
Frank Alexander called me and said, hey, Mike, why is Tupac down here? To me, when he got to his room, I was basically done with Tupac as far as that.
So I called Michael Moore on the house phone and said, hey, get back down here because Pac is, getting ready to want to, take off and everything. And he's upset about Reggie. Have you talked to Reggie? And Michael said, no, I haven't talked to Reggie at this particular point. Okay. So when Michael Moore got back downstairs, He met us. I told him where we were at. He came back downstairs.
Well, he instructed me to do something first. He got a little upset because now that I think back on it, he said he's paying for this shit and that he is telling us where we're going.
And Pac said, Frank, go upstairs, change clothes, and I'm going to go with you, change clothes. Michael Moore, you stay with me while Frank changes.
I remember him saying that real loud that day in the lobby, that I'm paying for you, you go where I say go. And then I said, Frank, you need to make a phone call to Reggie. We had an issue with our clothes. Me and Frank had on short pants that day. We needed to change our clothes to get into the right thing, the right clothes for the fight. But there was some problems there because with me not really being on Tupac, the person who really needed to change his clothes was Frank. So we let Frank go change his clothes while I waited.
So I was going to go back after changing downstairs to meet Pac. Pac had already changed. Michael Moore had to go change clothes.
Then Frank changed his clothes, came back and picked up on Pac.
And Pac said, Michael, come over to the MGM and meet us over there by the Grand Arena, entrance.
And then I went back to my room.
Well, in between this time, Pac and I caught a cab and went over to the MGM. While we were at the MGM out in the arena right there waiting to go in, so I had the MGM security walk us behind and walk us around. And we're waiting for Michael Moore to show up. At that point in time, I had lost all communication with Michael Moore. I didn't know whether he was coming, what was going on, or anything.
Because we were at the Lexor, and that's where I had my room was at. When I got dressed, I had no idea where they were at. There again, our communications we didn't have together. Normally, Frank and I would both have radios, and Frank could just say, hey, Mike, we're over here. There was no radio again. That day, Frank doesn't have a radio. I don't have a radio, which I normally have, and we have confusion. To this day, I believe that Tupac was under the impression that I was going to be going to the MGM Grand with him. But that wasn't the case. When I went to my room, I knew in my heart I wasn't coming back because I had been instructed to go to Club 662.
Pac was real antsy. He was like, where's Suge at? Where's Suge? How come Suge ain't here? He's looking at the time and stuff, and it's getting closer for the fight to start at this point. People are going in.
Tupac even called Reggie and had Frank get in touch with Reggie to find out where Michael Moore was at. So the problem was festering, and I knew something wasn't right.
Now, remember, I had already called Reggie and let him know that Pac was expecting Michael Moore to be with us. So Reggie knew there was confusion. I even saw people from California that knew me that came up to me and started talking to me.
Mr. Wright knew that I was pretty stubborn, and he basically knew that I wouldn't take my weapon off. So they kept checking to see where I was at. Well, if Mr. Wright told me to show up at the club at 10 o'clock, why did he start calling my room at 8? That's 2 hours. I think there was a reason for that.
And we were just waiting.
One phone call came from Al Giddens, who was also head of 662 security. And I asked him, I go, Al, why are you calling my room at 10 after 8 if I'm not supposed to be there till 10? And his answer was, Reggie just called me and told me to call you. I said, well, don't call me no more. And then after that, all my phone calls came directly from Mr. Wright. So 3 of the phone calls came from Mr. Wright, and 1 phone call came from Al Giddens.
Suge got there with a couple of people that was with him, whoever it was that had the tickets, and we went in to the fight right as the national anthem was playing.
So when I went to my hotel room, I told Tim Williams, something is not right here, Tim. What we have to do is find out what's going on. So I said, let me go downstairs and I'll change clothes and I'll work with Tupac until Reggie says something. Tim said, Mike, don't do it. He goes, you're going to piss Reggie off. Don't do it. I go, Tim, Frank's going to need some help. He said, don't do it. Just get dressed and go to the club. Well, we got down to the MGM, right in the front of it, right where the fight was at. And I was getting ready to get out of the car. I rode with Tim Williams over there. He goes, Mike, what are you doing? I said, Tim, I should just get out. Because if Reggie yells at me and I'm covering Tupac, how bad can that be? Well, at the last second, I decided to just stay in the car. I went to Club 662. And then when I look back at all the events that took place, I'm more to believe that we had something to do with Tupac's death.
Mike Tyson gets in the ring, knocks Bruce Seldom out in like 50 seconds or something like that.
Gambling, you can always punch, and that's it. It's over in the first round.
Yeah. Tyson was Pac's homeboy, and to see Tyson in the ring doing his thing, whooping up on Bruce Seldon, Pac was excited. He was jumping up and he was saying what he was saying. Everybody getting excited about a fight, and that continued from the seats into the back of the area where the boxers come back in at after the fight is over. And he, got back there and he's just going off, man, 50 blows, 50, man, he knocked them out, 50 blows, blah, blah, blah. That was it. After the Seldom fight, Suge wanted to go ahead and leave, and Pac was ready to go, obviously, as well. So we walk out of the back area. Mike Tyson never came in the back, so we never met up with Mike. We ended up leaving. As we left out of the fight arena area, as we got out into the casino area again, one of Suge's guys, his name is Trevon, came over and whispered in Tupac's right ear, because I was standing on Tupac's left. Tupac took off and ran as I took off behind him, and the rest of the entourage is behind me. Tupac comes to, at this time, I didn't know who it was, now being Orlando Anderson, standing by this planter, just like waiting. And Pac just ran up on him, and then Orlando Anderson swung back. At this time, Pac's medallion broke. When he reached down and grabbed the medallion, I grabbed him and got him out of the fight. By the time the entourage who was behind me had gotten there, the footage that is from the MGM everyone sees, Orlando Anderson's on the ground and everybody's kicking at him, beating him down or whatever. That's what took place right after we walked out of the fight. Orlando Anderson was standing in an elevator lobby by this tree. You can't see him from the main casino on account that there are walls all over the elevator lobby. So when we met Trayvon and the rest of the group, I had no idea how on a crowded casino floor they saw this guy. Now, I never knew who Orlando Anderson was. It's just like kind of, funny, ironic, whatever you want to call it. Orlando Anderson wasn't staying at the MGM, so I don't know why he was where he was, because I knew the way through the MGM because I was in the MGM walking around earlier looking for everyone. I knew how to walk us out of the MGM to the entrance. And I walked us out of the entrance. As the tape shows, I'm in front, Pac and Suge, and everybody is following me now. It took us about an hour and a half to get to Suge's house, but we only stayed at his house for a few minutes.
Vegas police were actually hired to be gate guards at the community night, had a home in. They noted that 15 cars were in the caravan.
As I walked over to the car, Tupac handed me the keys and said, no, go drive the Lexus, the little homies, because we're going to be over at the club partying, and you're going to be the designated driver, so you go drive with them. We always followed the artists, because most artists are felons that was with the record label. They had cases. They had some type of legal pending things going on. And we as security didn't want to be caught up and mixed up in any incidents that could possibly have happened with them while they were behind the wheel driving.
About 15 minutes before.
15 minutes prior, was he panicked?
Yes, he was nervous. See, he was, I have never seen, I've been on a street situation when we were police officers with Reggie. I mean, looking for armed suspects. I mean, and he's never been this nervous before.
Okay.
It's about 9 miles up the strip from Suge Knight's house to the location where the shooting happened. That's 45 minutes worth of travel at approximately 12 miles an hour to get to the location where the shooting happened.
When I saw the white Cadillac pulling up to Tupac and Suge, I mean, it was no different than any other car that was gonna come up to a red light and, stop. Only thing different about the Cadillac pulling up is that I noticed that it was getting a little bit closer to the car. No alarm, because there was, other cars pulling up to him and, the groupie kind of situation. And the arm came out, fired into the BMW, and myself and the three outlaws that was in the car with me, we were just... It looked as if everything was in slow motion. I mean, as clear as me sitting here right now talking about it, my memory will always remember. And the way I visioned it was in slow motion. And myself and the three outlaws that was in the car with me, we are just in awe. There's absolutely no way I thought that car was moving, because with all of the rounds that went through that car, they were dead. When I saw the white Cadillac pulling up to Tupac and Suge, it was no different than any other car that was gonna come up to a red light. And from my point of view, all I could see was the arm coming out. K-Dub and Trayvon, who were in front of the BMW, took off, and I ran up to the back of the BMW. As I was approaching the BMW, as I got about to the trunk, the car did a U-turn.
While I was working at 662, I heard something over the Nextels that we all carried for security. And what I heard was, "Got him." The voice was definitely one of our, not paid security, but one of security that works directly for Mr. Knight, came over the radio. Now, I couldn't pinpoint exactly whose voice it was, but it was some voice that I had heard before. So I knew it was not one of our direct security that was hired with us, but one of the what would we call them? What were homeboys? One of the homeboy securities, you said, got him right before me and Mr. Wright got in the vehicle to go get to the hospital. But at the same time he said that, he said, then someone else came on the radio and said, hey, don't say nothing over the radio, which was the Nextels we were using radio to radio.
Okay, that voice, they say, don't say anything over the radio. Did you recognize that voice by chance?
No, because at the time, Mr. Wright and I were talking about what had happened, and I just clearly heard somebody say, don't say that over the radio. But the person who said it was not homeboy security, nor was it one of our security guards. It was, to me, it would be like a stranger. Someone, and the person that said that was Caucasian.
Within minutes of the shooting, Reggie Wright Jr. states that he caught a ride to the hospital with attorney George Kalisis. I wonder if during that time the attorney told him what his problems could be.
Of course he did. And it's probably why Wright Jr. was already calling his dad in Compton. He tells his dad two things. A Southside Crip got beat up and Tupac and Knight have been shot.
It's interesting to me to see how this narrative evolved very quickly and how that narrative continued to evolve over time.
Right after he's off the phone with Junior, Senior calls Tim Brennan.
There was a police officer by the name of Tim Brennan with the Compton Police Department. Tim Brennan was the author of the narrative that there was a gang involved and that Orlando Anderson was in fact the shooter of Tupac Shakur.
Brennan said the main suspect was a guy, Orlando Anderson, who had been beat up earlier that night by Tupac. Apparently the beating was payback for Anderson, stealing a chain from some death row guy named Trayvon Lane.
Everyone wants to talk about this chain snatch. It's actually a pendant. So how important is the pendant story?
So, I mean, in my opinion, it was Orlando Anderson, you know, there's no doubt, because he's the one that got beat down. So
it is said that Trayvon Lane told Tupac that Orlando Anderson snatched his chain and kept it, and many people think that this is true. In fact, author Kathy Scott, who's revised her book like 3 times already, to this day is still repeating that narrative. We don't know exactly what was said to Tupac, but what we do know is Compton police officers Robert Ladd and Tim Brennan wrote in their 2017 book that the chain was never stolen. It had simply fell off and it had been recovered.
The official story at first was that no one knew who Orlando Anderson was.
So let me get this straight. Trayvon Lane, a gang guy, gets attacked by another gang guy, Orlando Anderson. 5 months go by, and no one tells him who does it. But Trayvon Lane knows who Orlando Anderson is.
This is no different than any small town. These guys all know each other.
Trayvon Lane knew exactly who Orlando Anderson was and exactly what he looked like. You know who else did? Robert Ladd, Tim Brennan, and Reggie Wright Sr.
Orlando Anderson didn't just have a history with Trayvon Lane. He had one with Brennan and Ladd. Ladd says Anderson tried to shoot him while they were eating lunch. And because of the past incident, you have to ask if it was all that gang retaliation narrative or it was a guy they didn't like who got beat up.
Why are they telling me what they tell me? Do they have a motive? Is there some reason why they're doing this? Because, I mean, it may be something other than the truth. It may, they don't like him, or they don't like the individual, or they got something against the individual, or somebody told them, I need you to pin this guy.
So they say he's their shooter and it's all about payback, but payback for what? That's where the death row pendant comes in.
Now let me tell you how important this pendant is to the entire narrative. It was so important that Robert Ladd perjured himself in grand jury testimony over it. In fact, one juror actually pinned him down on it and he had to recant his earlier testimony. I wonder if that juror read his book and saw the contradiction.
But you see, the chain snatch narrative wasn't quite cooked yet.
So they approach Frank Alexander to tell a lie. They ask him to repeat a narrative that the chain was stolen earlier that day, not months before. But what's interesting to track is that even a year later, that narrative about the chain being stolen that day still persists. In fact, Suge Knight told Vibe magazine a year after the event happened that the chain had been snatched earlier that day. Nothing about the Lakewood Mall, nothing about an event that happened months earlier. This was an event that was supposed to have happened that day.
So Reggie mind started thinking, because Reggie knows law. He's a hell of a cop. Like, wait a minute. Pop was going to try to arrest or place a citizen arrest on a guy that attempted to steal his chain.
And again, that first night, I don't think he was totally forthcoming on everything he knew.
Through all of my research, I've never gotten anyone to verify any chain snatch story.
With me, I was like, okay. So he was trying to arrest the dude that was attempted to take his chain. Because y'all remember, Pac's chain broke during the melee. But the reason that I told Frank bitch ass to tell that story was to save Pac, or to give a defense. It probably wouldn't have saved Pac, to be honest, but give him a defense.
That's all well and good, but the second time Reggie asked Frank to lie, Tupac was dead.
Yeah, witness tampering is trying to influence a testimony that a witness may give by any means that you can use to influence them. It could be money, it could be threats. The idea of tampering is there's a witness and you're trying to influence what they're going to say.
Every time I think it's over, they drag me right back in again.
And later on, when Frank Alexander is asked to repeat that story again, he refuses.
We were supposed to went down to Vegas, me, you, and Malcolm, because Malcolm can ID the person. We were supposed to send you and him down to ID, to see if we can look at the pictures, because they had a suspect, and that's when they had Orlando as a suspect. And then they were going to have y'all look at the pictures before then just to see if maybe that, made your memory get better or whatever. So you can describe somebody, but once you see a picture, oh yeah, that's him. And so that's what they were going to have you to do. And that's what David told them, that we got two witnesses that's, maybe can help you out and put some things in the light. And plus the statement that you gave about the chain and all of that, with the additional information.
But when Frank Alexander refuses to tell the lie that the chain was snatched that day, we see that the story begins to evolve a little bit from that the chain was stolen that day to that an event happened several months earlier and a chain was taken.
Was there a chain snatch at the Lakewood Mall? Where's the security tapes? Where's the police report? We all know it didn't happen that night.
His head of security is a ex-Compton police officer. It's suspected that you have Compton gang members who came up there to do a shooting, gangland-style shooting, and yet still, who's heading up the investigation? You have a lieutenant from Compton Police. This whole thing, it smells from high hell.
So I want to talk about false flag operation because that's what I see happening here.
So the definition of a false flag operation is where a group that is actually responsible for an event under the false flag is going to say that a second group came in and actually was responsible.
And so that's usually what when people talk about false flag operations, they're usually talking about things that are not necessarily true, but you hold it up as a flag that becomes a rationale for doing something else, but the flag you're holding up is based on false